Hi, I'm Ed Haig from Source. I'm here with my colleague Fiona. And wanted to spend a few minutes talking about thought leadership. Now, as many of you will be aware, consulting firms are churning out huge volumes of thought leadership these days. Something we know from first-hand experience because we gather and analyse much of it on a monthly basis. I suppose, Fiona, the obvious question that begs is, should they bother? Is this activity that is worth investing time and money in?
And it's a really good question because the top 30 firms in the world between them publish about 4,000 pieces of thought leadership every year, which may not sound like a lot, but if you allowed 20 minutes for each piece and you read for 8 hours a day, it would take you over 170 days to read everything.
That's a long time.
It's a long time indeed. No, your average client's not going to spend that much time reading thought leadership, however brilliant it is, or how much consulting firms think that they might do.
Yeah.
But all of our data points to thought leadership becoming the most important marketing tool. So, for example, we ask clients which is the most effective marketing tool a consulting firm can use. 75% of them say it's thought leadership. Interestingly, that sits alongside the personal contact that you get with account management and indeed even sort of events where you meet people. So our guess there is it's thought leadership in combination with people talking to you individually. So that thought leadership works, but it's not that you send people your 100-page report, but that you send it to them with a little sticker in it that says, read page 43, because page 43, we talked about that last time, that's the bit that's really interesting to use. They want that degree of interpretation around it. In fact, they almost want mass customization. They want thought leadership designed for them.
Yeah.
So that's one bit of data.
And what does it do for them though? What does thought leadership do for the client? Why do they like it?
Well, I think it does two things. I think perhaps we should divide that up into kind of the layers in the organisation. So if you look at junior people in an organisation, actually thought leadership doesn't do a lot for them. And they probably don't see a great deal of it because it doesn't really get to them. Middle managers are notoriously cynical, so they get sent, I suspect, far too much of the wrong kinds of stuff by consulting firms. And not surprisingly, say that they can't resist deleting most of it. The people that consulting firms should be focused on, I think, to be fair to them, do try and focus on the very top people in an organisation. And I think they use thought leadership for two reasons. One of which is to genuinely keep themselves up to date with new ideas. Not much time, they need to look at stuff. They can't wade their way through an academic journal. So let's look at short snippets of information that just keeps them thinking about new stuff. But I think they're increasingly using thought leadership as a means to distinguish between firms. We found, for example, that 30% of organisations take thought leadership into account when they're deciding who to invite onto their preferred supplier list. So that suggests that it's playing a role in people's shortlisting thinking. And in fact, we've just done a survey which suggests that certainly where management consulting is concerned, clients are more likely to take thought leadership into account than they are to turn to third-party analysts. So really important from a consulting firm's point of view to understand thought leadership isn't driving people's final choice of firm, but it's driving who's going to be invited into the room. And we've even heard some kind of quite extraordinary throwaway lines where somebody said, well, of course, if a firm doesn't write about this, we assume that they don't know anything about it. And that's quite a big leap. I mean, it's a wrong leap to make in a sense because firms may not have time to write about everything. On the other hand, I think it's again testimony to the extent to which thought leadership is now being used not just as a source of ideas, but as a help in terms of deciding who would you bring in, who would you think about in consulting firms. So very important indeed.
And implicit in what you're saying is when you mentioned the reports from analysts, is the idea that to some extent it's filling a gap.
Absolutely.
It's providing a purpose where something's lacking at the moment, where something's missing.
And I think that's really useful in a sense because I think the other way of filling that gap would be price. So a client could simply segment firms by price, and of course they do that all the time, but I think that's quite frustrating for consulting firms who want to be differentiated. They want to be able to segment themselves by value and expertise. Thought leadership is a way of doing that for firms. So again, I think it makes complete sense for firms to be investing as they are doing in thought leadership. I think the big question is rather like any kind of advertising in a sense is you could probably get as much done with half as much expenditure. The question is, where do you target your expenditure? What should you really focus on producing?
Really interesting. And we don't have a huge amount of time, but in a nutshell, what makes good thought leadership then? What should consulting firms be focused on to create the best quality thought leadership?
It's a big question, and everybody's has different views about thought leadership. If you were to pick one thing from a client point of view, it would be relevance. If they want to read stuff that's about their sector, it's even better if it's about the role that they've got, so it's writing about them as a chief executive or as about a chief finance officer. Increasing interest in thought leadership about different countries. not in terms of generic studies about what's going on in China, but as thought leadership aimed at companies who are operating in China. So they want stuff that's relevant, and of course if you're producing 4,000 or faced with trying to read 4,000 articles a year, you can't choose very easily, so you're going to pick stuff that looks relevant. And it's advice for consulting firms too. You might write to the most brilliant piece of thought leadership, but if a client doesn't see it as being relevant to them, they're never going to read it. So if you were to focus on one thing here, it's make sure that you make your thought leadership relevant to clients.
Great, well there we go. So thought leadership matters and making it relevant matters most. Thanks Fiona, and if you have any questions about thought leadership, you can contact us via our website, and of course you can look at Whitespace, our online thought leadership service.